Not to say that the global health pandemic is an I told you so moment to many politicians, but it is. In 2014, even our former president warned against this issue and said we needed to continue funding global pandemic research the following the Ebola crisis in West Africa. Barack Obama even stated that it was important to prepare for such an event because, in quote, at a press conference, it is needed for us to partner with other countries to prevent and deal with future outbreaks and threats before they become pandemics. And he stated this 5 years ago and stated that in 5 years, we may have a pandemic. Isn't that interesting? However, under the Trump administration and many other governmental entities, that particular program was dismantled and refunded and allocated in funds. And if that wasn't enough, even FEMA, the Federal Agency of Emergency Funds, should have turned heads. According to E&E News, Public Health, it was as early as July of last year that it began voicing its concerns. Within those concerns included how the pandemic would cause damage in our social, economic, and personal state. These arguments not only contradicted our current president's accusations of where our nation stands, but it also does not coincide with many other governors and leaders of individual states. As you can see, this is a pressing issue, and therefore I felt the desire to talk about it and encourage a potential way to relieve the issue by 1. Expressing the common ground where everyone agrees, which I will state next. 2. Mentioning both perspectives on whether or not we should continue social distancing or not. And 3rd, I will swap out what we currently do, which is mitigating and lowering our requirements for social distancing for something that is more encouraging of social distancing in order to secure a better and healthier future for the U.S. while dealing with the current pandemic. So, common places that all sides can agree on, and it is really important. We need to recognize that, for one, the U.S. isn't banding together like it used to. In prior times, when we dealt with the Ebola crisis in West Africa, the U.S. collectively collaborated to isolate the virus and collectively collaborated to do so. And during 9/11, another crisis, the nation once again banded together and expressed national pride while improving national security. Additionally, in other times of crisis, like the world wars, where finances were also very much disrupted as it is today, those times we also once again had a strong leadership that collectively made a decision for the nation as a whole, rather than now where it is very loose in what the federal government does and what state and local governments do, and everyone seems to make their own rules at every level. Due to the lack of concise data available about the virus, there is a lack of decision making available to also make the best policies, and that's why everyone is on different pages. Everyone can also agree that we need to also mass produce protective equipment and testing equipment in order to help the people, as we are currently pushing our healthcare system to its fullest. We need to have better equipment and protective equipment for the people working, because as it states in E&E News and the health issues, that, and it quotes, if the healthcare workers don't stay healthy, the rest of the response will collapse. This is something everyone can agree on. It's very clear that we are not on the same page on every level of the government, and that we also need to rush out testing equipment, as we only make about 100,000 tests right about now. But we have over 2 million cases within the U.S. The numbers don't add up, and it's not helping people in the crisis. The next state is understanding the two different sides. The two different sides are, if we do continue to do social distancing and fully enforce it, by the way, then we will be doing the strategy of potentially whack-a-mole, which means we'll constantly have to deal with flares as we, at minimal levels, open up the economy, which we have done and we have seen in certain areas. as this will most likely extend all the way into 2022 based off of current trends of finding vaccines. But the truth is, this may just become part of our society as an embedded disease that we will have to face, just like the flu. And it will have to continuously build up our immune system through vaccines to cover. With that, it's really important that we do actually practice quarantine or social distancing, because what we're doing is not only saving lives, but we're buying time. And that's the most important factor. With this, since we didn't attack it as soon as possible, we lack the time to prepare and research. And that's what we need to give them. We need to give them time to find a proper solution in order to best help. However, there are people that disagree with this, because though this could save lives, it's not enough. People are nervous as the spread continues. Many Americans have lost their desire to protect their neighbor. When by courts, a Harvard study was done that reported that we don't have enough jobs. 1 in 5 people right now are at risk of losing their jobs within the next 6 months. And that is scary. And it really begs the question, what's more important? Being safe from a potential virus, or not being safe because you can't afford to maintain a healthy lifestyle, like paying your bills and your light bill and buying adequate food? So the other option is to do the herd immunity tactic. And even though this is the fastest solution available, it is the most rash, as it will require us to just face the disease head on and make us basically have to do the survival of the fittest tactic. And this will cost thousands of lives. These will also really, really strain our healthcare system, as it won't be able to support as many people. And that's really scary, because if we don't have people to help the people getting sick, then we don't stand a chance. As they said, most likely immunity for people who do catch the virus and don't have major symptoms will only last a year. And with that, it would help jobs. Yes, it would. But it also would cost lives. Therefore, I also believe this is where a solution could possibly come in, is by swapping out potentially hurting millions of innocent lives by having them exposed to this virus that we don't know anything about still after months of being in quarantine. It is important that we do fully quarantine, but we better allocate how we distributed stimulus checks unlike before. Right now, under the Trump administration, we got stimulus checks, which were great, but we didn't even, as the majority of citizens, didn't even make 1/3 of the amount of money that was pushed out. And that is because anyone making over $1 million received $1 million bailout, which made up 2/3. 43,000 people made up 2/3 of our stimulus package. And yes, I understand that could go to corporations, but since there were no regulations over it, when we bailed out the corporations the last time during the recession, people just used that as a pay raise and did that to create more efficiency in their business, but didn't necessarily hire more people or keep people hired. It didn't correlate to maintaining funding any of us. Therefore, we need higher stimulus checks to allow us to feel more comfortable being at home, so that we can still reinforce quarantine and potentially save everyone's lives in the end. All we need to do is just have a collective, concise breakdown and enforcement by our leaders. And that's what will give us the success that we want. And that will give us the brighter future tomorrow, and maybe even get me my school year back.